In this video, we're making a vitamin C based formula for a lightweight grapefruit summer lotion. This is the members version of this recipe, so if you want to print the instructions and the recipe as you follow along, download the printable material at the link just below this video. So let's gather our ingredients and discuss what goes inside. You'll need 19 ounces of aloe juice, 3 ounces of grapeseed oil, 2 ounces of cocoa butter, a half an ounce of e-wax, a half an ounce of stearic acid, a half an ounce of pink grapefruit essential oil, a quarter of an ounce of Germol Plus, a quarter of a teaspoon of orange mica, a tablespoon of vitamin C powder, and 4 8-ounce clear Cosmo oval plastic bottles along with the caps. In this formula, it's the cocoa butter that's going to give us the rich creamy texture. We aren't using too much because this is a lightweight and it'll be dispensed through a small cap at the top of the bottle, so just a small amount of cocoa butter in this recipe will keep it nice and thin and still luxurious. Germol Plus, or preservative water-soluble PF, is our preservative. Now this is good for water-based products and emulsifications and is a broad-spectrum preservative, so it'll protect the shelf life of our product for about a year, although it is recommended to throw out your open lotions about every 3 months. This vitamin C powder is labeled L-absorbic acid, and it's made especially for cosmetics. This is water-soluble, and it's added in as a powder. Now I've got some tips about vitamin C in general in your skincare at the end of this video, so pay attention to that as well. Now we'll add just a dash of orange mica. Now this will help with your brain recognizing that this is a vitamin C or a grapefruit product, but we want just enough of tint to color the lotion and not color your skin, so lotions only get just a dusting of color in. We'll also add pink grapefruit essential oil. Now pink grapefruit has just a bit of a sweeter aroma than straight plain grapefruit, and this is good for lotion. A half an ounce gives this recipe a very healthy fragrance, so if you do want to add more, I don't recommend exceeding 3% of your total recipe. We'll cover those details about grapefruit essential oil in just a few moments. Grapeseed oil is very lightweight and it's heavy in linoleic acid, which soaks right into your skin very quickly, and it's known for being moisturizing and very easy and soothing on the skin. This is great for lotions. Stearic acid is our thickener in this lotion. This is what we put in so that the lotion will become thicker as it's cooling down over time, and it's not just a very loose liquid. If you want your lotion to be more thick than the final result, then add stearic acid. If you want it more thin, then you can tweak this recipe and take away stearic acid. These emulsifying wax flakes are a necessity. This is what's going to bond the aloe juice along with the oils. You cannot omit this in the recipe, otherwise your product will end up separating and you won't have lotion. So the e-wax is very important. Now finally we'll be adding aloe juice. Now I prefer aloe juice in my lotions for its soothing qualities, but you can exchange this for distilled water if you want a more simple base in your formula. Now before we get started, just make sure to allow for any of your utensils that you'll be using to soak in a warm bath of bleach water, and also you might want to add in your bottles and containers as well. This will sterilize everything so that once we're ready to package our items, everything's nice and clean. For us to get these ingredients bound together, I'm starting a simmering bath of water. It's about 1 inch deep, and I'm going to set all of the oils, butters, and waxes, minus the fragrance and preservative. I don't want to damage those, but I do want to melt everything down. So we'll get that started. Now the vitamin C is a fine white powder, and as I mentioned before, this is water soluble, so this is not going to mix in with the oils. So I want to get this dissolved into the aloe juice before we add in the oils, and then give this plenty of time to simmer into the aloe juice so it's completely dissolved and it's completely disappeared in that aloe juice. Now this doesn't happen immediately. It needs a little bit of time to soften up. As you can see, some of it's already settled into the bottom. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to come back in 2 minutes, let this warm up, and I'm going to keep stirring until it completely disappears at the bottom of that cup. Now, when you're making lotions, there's no need to rush this melting process. In fact, the slower you melt these butters and waxes, the better quality of a product you'll end up having. Sometimes if there's too much heat applied, it will compromise or it'll decompose these butters and waxes so that you don't really get the same product. So when this goes back to solidify, you want it to be nice, creamy, rich, and smooth. And so the best way to do this, to get the very best result, we just allow these to melt very, very slowly. Now once this appears to be all melted down, I'm just going to take a small set of tongs and I'm going to reach in and I'm going to grab each one of these bowls and I'm going to pour the contents into the aloe juice. This was the grapeseed oil, and you'll see that it'll separate. It doesn't want to mix very well. It'll float to the top, and that's perfectly fine. Not all of these ingredients want to mix with each other. The next one, I believe that one's the stearic acid. Take a look at how it solidified very quickly. It actually didn't melt, and that's because the oils that are in the bowls are not the same temperature as the aloe juice itself. Now this is perfectly fine. Ideally, you want these hot enough so that they all blend together, and you want the aloe juice to completely melt all of these other waxes, the e-wax and the stearic acid, but they have a higher melting temperature point. And so at this time it's perfectly fine. But what we do need to do is make sure that the aloe juice with all of the contents stay on the heat, because we do need this to melt down so that the emulsifying wax, as you can see this also solidified a little bit, is going to be able to do its job to combine these contents. So we just want to leave this in the boiling, simmering bath. Here I'm starting to blend this as it's in the pan while it's still over the heat. Now I don't recommend that you do this if you don't have a very sturdy area around you. I'm working on a very solid gas stove with a very heavy pot that's not going anywhere. So this is going to work for me, but just pay attention to if you're working on a teetering pot. It could be sort of any variable in there that makes this very unsafe, because if you tip that pot over, you're going to have boiling water all over you. So just keep that in mind. Now when it comes to lotion, the longer you can mix and emulsify, the better chance you'll have of preventing separation from your waxes and your oils and your aloe juice. And so you want to give this plenty of time to emulsify. When it comes to that e-wax, you want the temperatures to blend at a very hot, warm temperature. You want the e-wax to be completely melted down, but also you have to give it enough time. Time is one of the factors in making sure that these all bind together. So I'm going to blend this for a good solid 5 minutes before I even remove it from the simmering water. But again, if that's not a safe setup for you, take it out of the water and allow for this to blend. This one is going to be a very lightweight lotion, so as it cools, it's not going to be too difficult to work with. So you do have plenty of time to allow for this to emulsify and work with your stick blender. Now when you're making lotion, you might be aware that you're trying to prevent bubbles from forming in your lotion as it's going into the packaging. Well, there are two types of bubbles, and you kind of need to be able to recognize the difference. One is just where you're whipping air into your lotion product and the bubbles will start to settle and rise. That just comes from your stick blender holding it wrong. You see that I'm making a complete mess here. I am running the risk of adding additional bubbles and froth into my recipe. That one doesn't really bother me so much. You're making a homemade product, and I'm not really a stickler about making things always look perfect. Sometimes that homemade product, when it looks homemade, gives it a little bit of charm. But there's another type of bubble to look out for. And you can see that developing right here. And that's where you have this light frothy film, almost like cream on top of the lotion itself. That is where the product is separating while it's still hot. And that just means that, one, you may not have enough emulsifying wax in your recipe. But in this case, the emulsifying wax, it's just not completed doing its job. And that just means that we're not done mixing yet. So as you see this frothy, milky bubble foam at the very top, that's not separation from settling, that's just separation because we're still in the process of working on getting our product put together, and you need to give the emulsifying wax more time, plenty of heat, and just keep mixing it and keep working with it. Now I still do have more mixing to do at this stage, but I want to get that preservative and my essential oil incorporated. So to make sure my lotion is not too hot, I'm just popping a thermometer in there, and I really want to keep it under 120 degrees. That's sort of bringing it more toward the room temperature, and of course I've removed it from the heat. And now we're going to go ahead and add in our pink grapefruit essential oil. This is just a 1 ounce bottle and it's half full, so I'm going to go ahead and pour the entire thing in. 1/2 an ounce for the recipe. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mix in the Germall Plus. Now remember, as I've mentioned many times in many of these videos, it's now labeled under water-soluble PF, which is just a company that purchased the brand. You can still find it online under both names because people recognize it as Germall Plus, but the official new name for it is water-soluble PF. That's great for this particular product because we're working with a water-based emulsification, and so Germall Plus is going to work great for this lotion. Now at this point, all I need to really do is make sure this is completely blended in and make sure that this is emulsified completely. All of our ingredients are well incorporated and we can start transferring it over into our bottles. Now also, I add just a tint of orange, or you could use like a little salmon coloring, in order to just identify this for its branding so that you can see that this is the citrus, this is the grapefruit. It looks good in your clear through see-through bottles. With mica, you don't want to put too much in because you really don't want it to transfer and color your skin. You just want it to tint a tiny little bit. I'll even take out some of the lotion and just make sure that I don't accidentally overdo it. I'll take out some of the lotion and blend it in to make sure that I get the lightest tint of my colorant, then add that back in. Now if you're working with a thicker formula, or if you've put a little more stearic acid in here and it's starting to thicken up on you, you can get a nice double swirl texture, like a little drop swirl pattern into your lotion. But when you're working with the lightweight lotions that are this thin, don't expect that to happen. Once we pour it in, it's just going to tint the entire bottle. This is basically just a liquid that we're working with. This is still very warm, and this is going to set up, and it's going to become a little bit more thick. You'll see in the pictures at the end after 24 hours when that stearic acid really is able to do its job. Now there are a couple things I want to touch base on specifically with this recipe. That is the absorbic acid. One question you might have is, absorbic acid in itself, vitamin C in itself, is a very well-known preservative. So why are we adding Germall Plus, an additional preservative, if we're already putting plenty of absorbic acid into this lotion product as one of the skin enhancement products? Well, the answer to that is that absorbic acid is really a food preservative. And we really want a full spectrum preservative that's going to cover bacteria, mold, yeast, and that's going to really protect your product on the shelf life for up to a year. Now, of course, it's recommended that once you've opened your lotions, you really only use them for about 3 months. But maybe if your lotion has some time sitting on the shelf in your store, someone might not open it for 3 additional months. Not to mention, our Germall Plus is going to protect you for much, much longer than that, because not all people throw their lotions out in the recommended time. So by putting in the Germall Plus, you really are protecting yourself, despite the fact that it is true, absorbic acid is a preservative. But when you think about it being used as a preservative for food, most of your food is a perishable, and it's going to be used up in a much quicker time than a lotion will. Now, as we take a look at a few images of our final product, I do want to mention that grapefruit, as well as all the citrus essential oils, people can develop photosensitivity to these. It's not recommended that you apply vitamin C or citric types of essential oils and then go out into the direct sunlight. You can develop a sun-sensitive damaging from this. Now, some people will say, as long as you put on your suntan lotion over these products, you'll be perfectly fine. Other people say, as anecdotal evidence suggests, that they still have a sensitivity. The other thing is when you put this on your face, as it's applied over time, you may develop an allergy to fragrances. So just be aware of that. Even people who don't normally have allergies can develop them over time. So this is probably best marketed as a body lotion, although I personally will put it on my face. I don't have any hesitation. I have not had an adverse reaction to anything, but some people out there are very sensitive. And specifically with the essential oils, you have to pay attention to the citric essential oils, and the vitamin C will magnify these sensitivities, especially in the sunlight. So be aware of that, and if you have more questions or you have interest in the consequences of essential oils, make sure you visit Lesson 5, where we'll go into more detail about that.